Kuaye Dogunanda Shinaja Sori Janguru Dala Kanya Dayami.
In the phrase where it says the character of the sprout, which is found by the rational awareness or reasoned awareness, which sees an authentic object of knowledge as it is, or I think I translated that as real or true earlier. Authentic object of knowledge as it actually is the reasoning awareness a formal analysis by reasoning? If so, what other kinds of gnosis are involved? If not, what is its proper relation to reasoning? So, Shecha Yangdaba Dekone Dun Zikpe Rikshegi Nyepe Yugungo Rikshe di Jepak Tsema Rba Ya Jepak Tsema
Rikshe le Jepak Tsema Yawari, Munsuma Yawari.
Munsuya Yore. And Dini Yeshi Yang Rikshe Yorbe. Yeshe. Tony Munsum Dope Yeshe. Rikshe Sigre. Chetsan di Rikshe Sana Rik Karriores. Rikshe gi
Jidang Jabala Tana Zoche de Denzi Ribala Dana give Shewa in the Jabba Zoche Jabala Hogari. Boba Tama. Ribshe said the Ribayanda Dana give Shewa Rikshes.
So the primary, the fundamental way of defining this reasoning awareness or reasoned awareness, rational awareness, is in terms of thought, which is a valid knowledge arising from reason, from syllogistic reasoning, in which one employs valid reasons to establish something, to prove something. But then there's also forms of this, it's called rational awareness, we'll call it rational awareness, which are not thought. The initial form, which is involved in, you could say, formal reasoning, has thought involved, is a form of thought, but there are other forms that are not thought. So then the kind of rational awareness here that does not have thought would be a cognition which directly perceives emptiness.
Is
that it?
Yeah. Da kwale so ta jin kunzo zimba tong xewa nye be sun so ho che da zumba xi de kunzo demba nge wa lo umi ta wa nye ku zu yi ro kunzo demba xewa de ta kan de 준비 된 바, 봐. demba ni kunzo demba ni tenla mi denjing. Denjing ngo de zam se. Lo kunzo wa demu denjing ngo denji tenla mi demba zumba yin be na. Ani kunzo demba si gwa ro. Yin sa kunzo demba ni tenla mi denjing. Denjing ngo zam de demba yin be sa. Ani tenla mi denjing denjing ngo demba de Lola Jodi Zamba, T. Tendong Evala, Ani Zumbang Yakures. Zumbang Evala, Nella Demba Kikures. Tendong Evala,
So then this leads into the next topic. That's where we stopped today, earlier, that in order to ascertain that something is a thing, is a phenomenal reality, one has to have obtained the Madhyamaka view. And this is explained as follows, that phenomenal reality, in fact, is not real, but because it's real simply within the perspective of the misapprehension of things as being real, in order to ascertain the specific definition of that, one has to have ascertained that it is spurious.
Oh, yeah. This is what goes on. Say, Kasi, Tendo never let the bang a girls. That she sends she pumbata wuji. She's a timba, Louis Tendo never la. She's a timba lua, Nanjudam, Nanju Mitumba. Ra. Louis Tendo never la, she did la, Nella Temba to be Shen Rishiki Sinju, Tawa Nepa Godes. Meeting la, dancing Shen Yu. Kabaki, Shiki Sinchu, Tawanya Bajukures, Demba repair Maki Bala, Ani Zumba Semen Mitrubichel, Singela Dembakin, teacher, Zumba Tukures.
So then, for example, with the case of a thing like to illustrate this, a pot, if we take a pot for an example, in order to ascertain that this is a deceptive object, a spurious deceptive object, that it's an object of knowledge, which is a spurious deceptive object. Here again, deceptive has the sense of a disparity between the way the thing exists and the way it appears and the way it exists. Then, in order to have that sort of ascertainment of it as an object, which is spurious and deceptive, then one must have obtained a view that by means of eradicating or negating the perceived object of it, which apprehends it as apprehends that thing as being real. So one has to have obtained the view, which is derived from having negated through rational awareness, rational investigation, that the conceived object, which of the holding, the misapprehension of it as being real, that has to be negated first. So, the reason for that is that if without negating the thing being real, without negating it being real by reason, one cannot establish it as spurious. One cannot establish it with valid cognition as being spurious.
Oh yeah, that kunzu temba ngewala temba ngundu kawa gogo na, tanya zashi gasu. Tanya lanya matemba, tambi tenye to menjo. Tambi tenye madoba, yangan dawa to menjuru senyi. Asumyadang. Ani jubi gasu tanya temba tabjung juwadi. Kasi tanya temba tabsu juwada. Chandan temba tabjung juwadi senyi. Ani tanya lanya matemba se ngela tanya temba matemba la ani tanda temba midoba songada. 아니 가서래 주비 가서 타냐 담바 탑수 주와당 아니 단단 담바데 아니 탑 텔라 때나 총아 송부 인장 아니 디 민가가 가데 샤고래서나 데 가서래 타냐 레니 마데바 세간라 아니 시바나 가서래 군조비 띵도 시카사다 위 띵도 아니 내로 땡라 배바 채바 내로 땡라 배바 채바라 아니 가서래 내로 땡라 바비시 타냐비시 군조 땡바데 안고스도 그래 땡라 베비시 가사다고 군조 땡바데 뭐 마송바라 아니 시디딘데 땡라 배고 마 땡바 두고 말에 대나신 다녀 대바 탑수 주와 세야 대한 대나신 전에 시카게 띵도 대란 바사기 시 군조부터 아니 가서 용서 마도 바라 시디 띵도 아니 전단 대와 대란 밥 두고 말해 스타투스 잔 되겠지.
So what we've said here is that in order to, without negating, rationally negating that the thing is real, one cannot validly establish it as being spurious. So that's showing the way in which this procedure operates, the process of coming to understand it. So here this is explained also in the basic wisdom, where it says that without depending upon the conventional, that when without relying upon the conventional, one cannot understand the ultimate. So that verse is explained. That verse appears in the basic wisdom, and then similarly, there's a verse in the introduction to the middle way that says that that conventional reality acts as the method, and then the conventional reality acts as the method, and then the ultimate reality arises from that method, is that which arises from that method. So in both of these verses, it's being explained that without first establishing that the thing, some kind of base, is a phenomenal reality, and without establishing its character as being a phenomenal reality, that establishing this spurious nature with respect to it, then one cannot establish that one cannot establish its character as ultimate reality.
타냐라니 마담바 타비트니 또 뭐주시 가나 아니 전담 담바 가라 땡라 베비시 아니 타냐 비초 군조 담바 그 타냐 비초 가사다오 그러와 오 타냐 비초 가사다고 로유도 마송와다 대라 마담바 로유도 마송와라 시디딘도 아니 가사 라시메 바때나 두고 말해.
So then, therefore, what's being said here is that without first having understood or ascertained that, let's take the example of the person, a thing like a person, without having first established the person as a phenomenal thing, as a conventional or phenomenal thing, then there's no way to establish the ultimate reality with respect to that base. The base itself the person has to be established as a conventional thing, a conventional reality or phenomenal reality, before one can establish its ultimate reality, that is, its lack of intrinsic existence. So
타냐 담바 탑수 주와 세데 시康돈이 땡라 베비 시康가사라서와 타냐비 최대 도바데 탑체 대도와라 되는 티딩도 안에 된도 가바데 탑라죠.
So then the same thing is same exact idea is expressed in the line from the introduction to the middle way that we cited, that the understanding the conventional is the method, or conventional is the method, and then the ultimate arises is that which arises from that method. Here, first one has to establish the person, for example, as a conventional thing, as a the phenomenal reality of the person, and then based upon having done that, then one can establish the person's ultimate reality, its lack of being established as real, its absence of intrinsic existence.
Oh yeah. 대레만도 양 가시기 군조 댐바당 군조 기 댐바 켜바셔야 된다고 다 들이 맞힌다 잘.
So then other 군조 댐바당
군조 기 댐바다 군조 댐바 켜바 정견들이 용시를 이와래. 다 들이 참 먹어체.
So then there's another way of talking about phenomenal reality versus the reality of the phenomenal, and there's some discussion that one can do of that, but it's not necessary to go into that here.
다시와 군조 댐비튼 농을 마주장 아니 천시 품소 내가 명가와 돼서 다 중에 시간 나치 전에 라 군조 댐바 그튼 너무 된생 뭐 된지 tenla zimba de madru장 아니 군조 대비 천시 품방에와 돼 명가와 다 되신 거래 품남라 써와 품바다 남불라 써와 군조 댐바 이양 아니 품바다 남불 내디 잠바 군조 댐바 내고 말이 이양 대달리 주바나 품바다 남불라 써와 타냐 빌려 대다 그 주바나 군조 대비 ten 너무 된생 뭐 된신 tenla zim바티 를 좀 먹게 돼. 댐비텐데 좀 먹게 돼. 배라티 배라 봄남소 라신신 매나 매신도 나위 주마다고 이나양스. 그봐. 봄남소 라신도 매신도 나위 나노 주마다고 이나양. 봄남소 참여 주디 잠바 라신도 매신도 나위 나노 주마다고 주고 말이 대다 주비지 주마다에 좀 먹어와 신호.
So this leads to the next point, which is that the meaning of phenomenal reality, even though it's not established from within the perspective of a cognition, that doesn't necessarily entail that that cognition does not ascertain the basis for this kind of identity, that is the pot, etc. The basis of the identity being the base for the identity as a phenomenal reality. So then the basic text, that's the outline that's inserted into the text. Then the basic text here says that pots and blankets, etc., everyday pots and blankets, etc., when those are which are phenomenal realities, when those are established by cognition, it's not necessary that they be established by that cognition in the sense of being phenomenal realities. Here, having for a cognition to establish something in the sense of being a phenomenal reality, it would have to understand that the way the thing appears, that is the way it appears to the ignorance which misapprehends it as being real, and the way it actually exists are not in sync or do not correspond. So it's not necessary, therefore, for that cognition to apprehend or to establish them in the sense of being phenomenal realities. And then the example that's given here is that just that pots and blankets, etc., they are like magical illusions which appear as if 봄남소 랑신 메신도
봄남소 랑신 메신도 아니 랑신이 투안나와 두마다 그래. 봐. 이나야 봄남 어디 잠바 안 봄남소 랑신도 메신도 나요 두마다 그래 말해.
So the pots and blankets, etc., are like magical illusions in that they appear as if they had intrinsic existence, whereas they don't have that intrinsic existence. So they're similar to magical illusions in that respect. And then, just similarly, then the mind or cognition, which establishes those things, that is pots and blankets, doesn't necessarily have to establish them in the sense of being like magical illusions.
Oh yeah, 다 부서 직단지 생활 때의 군조당 파발라 때의 전담도 좀 미루비 추니스 다 광도下巴기 군전 티치를 우미다와 메비 소소기위 우미다와 돈이 마도비 안에 소지 생활라 때의 안에 품소 군조 담바탕 아니 돈이 또위 파발라 때의 담바 줘봐 딜리스 마와르바 마레스 돈이 마도비 소소기위 원라 품소 군조 담바 담바레스 파발라 때의 아니 품소 전담 담바 줘봐 디 루스 마와야 르바 마이데
So then the next topic is that it's incorrect to assert or to posit that that something like a pot and other things like that is phenomenal when looked at from the perspective of worldly awareness. And on the other hand, is ultimate when looked at from the perspective of an Arya's knowledge. That sort of presentation of this is incorrect, and then the way that's incorrect is given in what follows. And the basic text here says, therefore, it's incorrect to say that looked at from the perspective of the awareness of an ordinary person who does not have the Madhyamaka view, then pots, blankets, etc., are phenomenal realities, and then looked at from the perspective of an Arya, then they are posited as being ultimate realities. This kind of presentation, someone who expresses this kind of presentation, is incorrect. And then the evidence for that is given in the passage that follows.
Oh yeah, that mind, riba mind, jujele. Tela soso jo namji tenda ba khayin ba tingi papa nawada jeyu papa nawada jeyu jeyu namni kunzo tam yila sida soso jeyu ngo temba khayin ba de ane papa nawada jeyu jeyu namji kunzo tam yila sanikala ane dire ane dot mawre yage ane soso jeyu pomnalo soba kunzo de kunzo yin 파바라 되디 아니 담바인 세테란 도디 주제래텔라 소소교원한지 된다바 강인 바지 소소교용의 담바 강인 바티 파바 나와다 제위 제유전 남지 군조 점이라 비랑신 동반이 강인 바티니 대남지 된다고 시송발레 도네 마이 비셋 와
대랑신 돈이
당마에 도나마에 데려와 대랑신 동바 강인 바티니 대랑신 동바니 강인 바티니 된다고 쓰거나 랑신지 동바니 되니 된다고 시송발레 도나마와 있어야들 여기 따와들와 소소교원은지 된다고 강인 파바 나와다 제가는 군조비 시와 텔란도데 가지 되게 돈이 맞아 소소교원이 남 저원은 용을 군조비라 So then
the evidence for this or the reason for this is given from the commentary on the introduction, where it says that quoting the text here, it says that which is ultimate for ordinary beings is for the Aryas who are engaging in objects together with the appearance of them. For them, it's merely phenomenal. And the nature of that emptiness, which is the nature of that, is their ultimate. So this passage from the introduction then shows that the position that was advocated above is actually the opposite of what is being said here in the introduction, because the other this wrong view which was presented above was saying that the conventional is established as it appears to ordinary beings, and that then the conventional as it's seen by Aryas is the ultimate, whereas this passage from the Madhyamaka, the introduction to the Middle Way, says the exact opposite of that.
Oh yeah, 이미 채로 오세. 다 여기 소소 깨워 남지 뭐로 땜바 인세 대양 아니 뒤뒤 된다 마셔 그 말에. 대라 소소 깨워 남지 뭐 된다 바 인세 대 가르스 거래 세나 소소 깨워 돈이 마도 소소 깨워 남지 아니 땜바 짐밤. 대다기 댄징기 뭐로 아니 땜바 잡면 임자나 된다 바 인세 대 다디 대대만 소고도와 소소 깨워 남지니 품소라 덴바 진라 품바라 소와 덴바 진라 대니 된다마 덴바 진디 삼바 된다마 여바 진바레 덴루도 진바다 된다마 진바라와 임베 안에 대다기 시행원라 소소기용 대다기 되되 대다기 시행원라 되되 덴바 세대 가르에서나 대다기 아니 가설에 덴루도 매바 덴루도 나와다 덴루도 매바 또 무도 봐 인자 나도 니가 그 초바데 좀 무도 봐 저와 아니 또 메뉴 봐 인자 대다기 시행원 된바 인시 거래 저와 대다기 시행원라 되게 풍선나 전담 봐 추바 전담 추바 세대 된바 인지 세대 된바 된바 인지 있어 전담 주바 인지 세례 덴바레 덴바 인바데 칸에서나 코이 좀 좀도 봐 덴루도 나양 덴루도 매바데 또 메도 봐 인장 아니 전담 주바 뭐 덴바 인지 군조비 전이 민호
So then here this is explained further. In this passage that was just quoted, it says that that which is ultimate for ordinary beings, here ordinary beings have to be specified as ordinary beings who have not understood emptiness yet. And so what is ultimate for them, the text, the passage cited says that is merely phenomenal for Aryas who are engaging in objects together with their appearance. So then the explanation of how ordinary beings who have not yet achieved the view of emptiness, they perceive things, they perceive pots, etc., as if they were real, and since that misapprehension of pots and so forth as being real is a form of is itself apprehending them as being ultimately existent. Here, ultimately existent means as if they were real. Then, from the perspective of their cognition, or depending upon the perspective of their awareness, pots, etc., seem to be ultimately established as ultimately. That is, they hold them to as if they were established as real. But this is, but they're not, pots, etc., are not phenomenal objects for them, in the sense that because here the Aryas who are engaged in objects with appearance, for them, pots and so forth, when pots appear to them, they perceive them as being merely phenomenal. They don't, they appear real, but they don't misapprehend them as being real. But for the ordinary persons who have not understood emptiness, the pots, etc., appear to be real, and they apprehend them as being real. Thus, they hold them to be ultimately existent. And then, from the perspective of that kind of awareness, pots, etc., since they seem to be established ultimately, or established as if they were real, ultimately existent, then they don't know them as as being phenomenal.
Oh yeah, 군조의 termin 어체. 다 대다기 어로서나 돈이 마도베 가사 대다기 어로. 아니 수소 아니 태연다바 주밤 아니 댐비 댐바기 있어 아니 댐바기 시품서 대다 알아봐 돈이 마도베 가사 대다기 태연다바 주밤만 댐비 시품서 남 댐바 세대 그 난동 주마도 바라카 자진자인바 태연다바 주시 품서 남 파배 규지 난도 주마다고 된루도 나양 된루도 마도바 주마다고 자위 이시지스발라 되나 아니 군조 담래 군조가 이노 사사딩오 댐바 난도 주마 난도니 저고 처바도 주마 주바 인장 댐바 된다바 아니 파배 규지 난도 주마다고 아니 자위 이시지스발라 되나 군조 담래.
So then, so here, these ordinary beings that have not yet understood emptiness, for them, they're not able to establish things in the way that they, ordinary things like pots and so forth, as they appear to Aryas. For the Aryas, these pots and so forth, as we've said, appear to be real, but because they don't have this misapprehension, they're not apprehending them as being real, then they're established as a composite of appearance and emptiness. The appearance side is they're appearing to be real, and the emptiness side here is the understanding that they're not real. So for the Aryas, then they have that ability to see and to know ordinary phenomenal things as this the combination of appearance and emptiness. But ordinary beings, since they don't have the ability to establish conventional phenomenal things in that way as the combination of appearance and emptiness, then within their perspective, the pots and so forth are things which appear to be, seem to be established as real. They seem to be ultimately existent or ultimately established. And so these pots and so forth, which appear that way from their perspective, within if one considers them from the point of view of the way they're seen, being seen by the gnosis, which validly knows appearance as like a magical illusion here within the continuum of an Arya, then from that point of view, the pot and so forth is phenomenal. Here, one should qualify this as merely phenomenal.
아니 네게 난도니지 초바 초바 인상 덴바 샤도 매베 아니 군조 잠래 예순소.
So then from the point of view of that awareness, here this again Arya's awareness that knows things as like that knows things as like that knows appearances as like a magical illusion. Because they're able to, they know that they're this combination of appearance and emptiness, then, because from the perspective of that awareness, they're seen in that way, being this combination of appearance and emptiness. Then, from the perspective of that awareness, they're not posited as being real, and therefore they're called merely phenomenal.
다 주바 품소단 대다게 라신 체고와세가 품소 대다게 오당 아니 대다게 땡게 라신 타도 동반이니 라 대처거와 대다나 라 군접당 전당게 개바 대다나양 대다나 대다게 라신 품소 대다게 라신 타도 전담 된다면 말아봐 품소 대다게 라신 전담 된바 송배 품소 코란 경우 군접 품소 코란 품소 대다 경우 군접 아니 타냐 담바체 군접당 품소 대다 기던 게 돈이 대다 그 랑신 아니 파비 된다 뭐 체내세요 랑신 파베 된다 뭐 체내 줘봐 차이
So then this
Yeah.
then this leads to the next point, which is that one must distinguish pots and so forth and their nature. Their nature here referring to their final nature, emptiness. So, and then the basic text says that although that's the case, since their nature is taught as ultimate reality, then pots and so forth are phenomenal. That is here phenomenal in the sense of conventional reality. So then here pots and so forth are said to be phenomenal. That means they're phenomenal reality or conventional reality, the same meaning here. And their nature, here this is referring to their final nature, the final nature of the pot, etc., which is ultimate reality or emptiness, is in here this is called the ultimate four aryas. One should express it like that.
범속군조와단 대다가 하시 파베 된단 바고 아니 된담 담바 시 체는 줘봐 차이 좋아 된담 담바 시 체는 줘봐 차이 범속 파발라 된담 뭐 시마와 미차데 범속 파발라 된담 뭐 시 미차데 티 양답이 된통이 시 분소 대다기 양답이 된통이 아저씨기 아니 분소 많이 비치당 와 분소 대다기 많이 비치당 하세요 티 양답이 된통이 시 분소 대다기 아니 된담 대밤 신이 통이 리시기 아니 분소티 많이 비치당 양답아 통이 리시기 예바 된다대비 된도 숨이치로 So then,
so one shouldn't say that one has to distinguish them in that way, but one should not say that pots, etc., are ultimate for aryas. One should not say that because the reasoning awareness which sees the authentic object, here authentic object means emptiness or ultimate reality. So that sort of reasoning awareness which sees the authentic object does not find pots and so forth. Pots and so forth are phenomenal realities, and whereas the reasoning awareness which sees the authentic object, that which is found by that reasoning awareness, is explained in the sense of being ultimate reality. That is, here ultimate reality is also a synonym for that would be dharmata, or the nature, the final ultimate nature of things.
파발라 된다 뭐 있어.
파발라 된다.
벌써 파발라 된다 뭐서 파발라 아니 가서래 된다 미나 담바 투그레스. 라 담바 투그레스. 아니 담바 오시마 메차지 된다 오시마 메차데스. 된다 뭐 tum나 디 양다바 토비 리시기다. 아니 가서래 리시기 녀고래 많이 비실. 라 양다바 토비 리시기 녀바 된다 된다 비튼도 숨 비실.
So if pots, etc., were that which is, if one says that pots and so forth are the ultimate for Aryas, then that would be incorrect, because if pots and so forth were that which is found by this reasoned awareness which sees the authentic object, then those pots would be established as real, because the way they appear and the way they exist would be coincide, and that's not the case. Whereas ultimate reality, or the nature, final nature of things, is taught as that which is found by this reasoning awareness which sees the authentic object.
Oh yeah, that teacher kunzoji yawa shebala pu checheni. That kunzoji yawa tela jozu tela. Ani da tarani tanjuwa da ani ranjuba ni gacha jozu midumba yinzang. Ani kunzoji yawa jesu mesungba sungware. Right? There conditions sana tarani gacha masumba yinzang. Da tanjuwa gi gacha ranshi chuba mide. Rang chaniji machuba, rangona machuba, ranshinji machuba. Da temba machuba chikba tegwa. Da ranjuba gi ti chabar cheni temba machu. Rang chaniji chub, rangona chub, ranshinji chub cheni. Otu sungware. Yinzang da rang chaniji chuba de 아니 네 가자 참모 예민라 타라니 믿음바 인상 뒤에 왕기 아니 군족이 이어와대라 양다 군족당 로비 군족 저도 달라야 미라 연구하래.
So then this leads into the explanation of the differentiation of the phenomenal. Here the two Madhyamaka schools of Prasangika and Swatantrika, they have different discordant ways of establishing the object of negation. And because of that, there's also differences in the way that they differentiate the phenomenal as being either authentic or correct, and versus erroneous. So the conventional can be subdivided into the phenomenal can be divided into correct phenomenals, things that are phenomenal in a correct way, and things that are erroneous phenomenal things. And the two systems differ in how they define those two categories of the phenomenal as into correct and erroneous, because of the way they differ in the way they define the object of negation. For the Prasangika school, they say that the Prasangika says that things being established as real, things being ultimately existent, things being established, things existing by means of their own intrinsic nature, things existing by means of their own intrinsic identity, these are all synonymous. Whereas in the Swatantrika Madhyamika school, they make a distinction. They say that things are like in the Rangyupala Gache.
가자 ranjuba tanju나 가자 그 참아 차라요 아래서 ranshi 추와 ranjuba 그 가자 참아 믿어봐 시단한 거 같은 자 ranshi 추와 돼봐
랑시기 두바 랑시기 두바
ranshi 추바 랑은에 추바 랑그 천이 추바 강가되고 아래
So the Swatantrikas don't accept that things are established as real in the way they define it, but they nevertheless say that things are established by means of intrinsic nature. They are established by means of their intrinsic identity. So they do say, the Swatantrikas then would say that things are established objectively, they're established by means of their own intrinsic identity, and they're established by means of their own intrinsic nature. They accept that those things do exist, whereas the Prasangikas reject all of those in total.
Uma ranju bata shewa rangi tsanyi ji chuwa nawa ni shewa rangi tsanyi ji chuwa nawa ni shewa rangi tsanyi ji chuwa nawa ni nawa tatu yaba ngewe shewa rangi tsanyi ji chuwa nawa tatu yaba yinbe siyade kansore ranzan nawa la yaba kanyi rangi ngo yaba tebi lula ranzan nawa la dene chuwa sona chuna ane kui shaja de nyeba zhuang muduba yinzang da xiewa rangi chanyi chuwa nawa ni xiewa rangi chanyi chuwa nanga xiewa de kari xia gore sana xiewa nyangsu nyoge rari xia go jire wa xiewa rangi chanyi chuwa nawa ni rari la jana zhiga rwa yang toba la jana zhiga xiewa rangi chanyi chuwa ne toba la nawa ni nawa dadu yeba ngewe si gala rangi chanyi chuwa nawa dadu rangi chanyi chuwa yeba ngewe rwa dashi jula ji kaso re yuxian xiewa te la ani yangda kunzo da lobe kunzo nye che ge ma re da rari la jawa yina xiewa yina rang nyamsu nyewe rari la rangzai nawa la de manzhu wa joba ani nawa ranzai nawa la de manzhu wa chab ge re ani de la ani kaso re 양다 군조다 로베 군조 니제 야 마레 유젠라 양로 니제 그 마레 와 유젠라 양다도 바꾸지 니 마레.
So then taking the position of the Swatantrika Madhyamika first, this position in general the Swatantrikas would say that that if a thing exists, it necessarily has to be established by means of its own intrinsic identity. If things are not established by means of their own intrinsic identity, then there's no way to establish them. There's no way for valid cognition to establish them and to have any determination of them. So this is their basic position, that therefore, I mean, the thing has to have some degree of being objectively established. It has to have some sort of be established by its own intrinsic nature to some extent. So they have that basic position. And then with respect to their understanding of how awareness knows objects, if we distinguish between the perceiving subject and the object of that perceiving subject, then an awareness, when an awareness appears as established by means of its own intrinsic identity, then that as it appears, it definitely has to exist. So when where it says awareness, there's two ways to construe this or to interpret this. Awareness could be understood in the sense of it's called apperception, or an awareness which is aware of itself. Apperception is the technical term for this. So an apperception necessarily has to be correct with respect to its appearing object. And in this sense that the appearing object is that awareness itself. So, and because that awareness is established by means of its own intrinsic identity, therefore it can't be mistaken with regard to its appearing object. And then another sense of this is talking about it just in terms of thought in general, that thought is also, if we take awareness as thought, then there's a way to discuss this things being established by to be established by means of their own, as they appear, to be established by means of their own intrinsic identity, and necessarily have to exist as they appear in that sense. So because of this, then from the point of view of a perceiving subject, the Swatantrika school doesn't differentiate between a correct and erroneous phenomenal nature. It doesn't make that distinction from the point of view of the perceiving subject. Rather, it does it from the point of view of the objects that are cognized by a subject.
Oh yeah. 他有些写完了，养老你说没些把人，他有书这了说，书了说完了，有的弄完了，俺那其他弄完大几，然后有的去有现在了，其他弄完大几，然后趁你出没出给，俺那开把月吧，趁你去原面结吧你，他挺空的了，俺那那边给一些这个另一个用的，那都这样团结他。 你去的没你去，养大马英吧，工作面积要往前，才天的，是吧
？So then, they don't Swatantrikas don't distinguish correct and erroneous the phenomenal nature from the perspective of the subject. Rather, they do it from the perspective, from looking at the perceived objects. So here, the way the objects are distinguished as being either correct or erroneous is in terms of the way they appear as an object, whether or not they exist as they appear as objects, whether they exist or don't exist by means of their own intrinsic identity. So let me say that again. Yuldu nangwala jitar nangwa targi rangi tsiniki
rangi tsiniki yeme jeba cheba.
Yuldu nangwala jitar nangwa targi rangi
jitar nangwa naji rangi tsiniki jeba da meba.
So this will get explained later, but what's being presented here is that something that's appearing as an object, if it exists if it exists by means of its own intrinsic identity as it appears, then it's classified as a correct phenomenal nature. But if it doesn't exist in that way, then it's erroneous, and this will get explained later. First, the proof text for this, or the source of this distinction, is the differentiation of the two realities. And in that, there's a verse which starts off by saying, although they appear in a similar fashion, one is able to function and the other is not able to function. And therefore, the phenomenal is distinguished in this way into that which is correct and that which is not correct.
제가라 아니 가르를 송아래 제가라 아니 수라 소용 오고당 최신의 소년라 소용 오니오데 소년다 소다 소 아니 최신의 소년이 오데 아니 랑 요도 집에 요전지写完了 나도 자양 나와 写完了 나와 자와래 나도 자양 전체당 민주비 전체당 뉴치당 민주치 세가라 수년 나위 왕 아니 수년 준비 가서 순지 수대 수준비 왕실라 나와다 아니란 거 천이 출발해 전체 뉴발해 수년 나위 왕실라 아 수년 나와다 란거 천이 전체 민주 반자란 거 천이 좀 출발해 나도 자양 전체당 뉴치당 민주치 是吧？养大马英把工作年纪也往前才干了，书 아니 란진 왕원라 상지 쉐와라 나와다르 텐체바 나와다라가 천지 주바 인장 아니 가서래 양다바레 양다군조레 소녀 란진 쉐와라 나와다르 마주와데 아니 가서래 로비군조레 양다 많이 봐 양다 가서 나도 다 전세다 뉴시다 민리바 양다 많이 봐 군조니 예와 체 인자 군조 얘기 예와 치디 컨트레잖아 나와다 마주바 소녀 수순정 왕실 나와다 마주바 아니 가서래 돈이 마도비 다 안집이 놀라 채소나 니도 마비도 왜 가사기 아니 또 민주바 인장 양다군조래 소년 나와다 마주바 아니 순년집에 미셔라 소년 나와다 마주바 니도 마도비 가사기 또 니바 인장 안 로바래
So then, how are these distinguished then? Here the verse says, although they appear in a similar fashion, one is able to perform a function, one is not able to function, and therefore, by virtue of that, then the phenomenal is divided into that which is correct and that which is erroneous. Here, an example, a way to understand this is in terms of a visible form on the one hand as an object, and then the visual awareness, which is apprehending that visual form. That's one set. The visual awareness, the eye visual awareness, and a visible form. As object. And then on the other hand, visual awareness and the reflected image of a face to reflected image of the face to the visual awareness. The visible form is able to perform the function is able to perform a function, whereas the reflected image of the face is not able to perform the function that it appears as an actual face. And it's based upon this kind of distinction that they differentiate between so-called correct phenomenal things and incorrect phenomenal things. The face, the reflected image of the face, which appears as an actual face to the visual awareness of someone, that can be understood by a person that doesn't understand, that doesn't know the nature of reality, that has not understood already emptiness, or as not being an actual face. As not being able to perform the function of an actual face. So therefore, that kind of appearance can be understood as being an erroneous form of a phenomenal appearance, whereas the appearance of a visible form, an actual visible form, to a visual awareness, for someone who has not yet understood emptiness, they're not able to determine that is not doesn't exist as it appears, and also then similarly the disparity between these two kinds of objects is that the visible form is able to perform the function of an actual visible form, whereas the face, as a reflected image of the face, cannot perform the function of a actual face. Gendi rangetsiniki nangwati rangetsiniki
나와 자양 나도 자양 전체바다 민주치를 대인배 제치소
rangetsiniki tupa
랑게 천이지 나와 신도 안에 전체바 랑게 천이 좀
So the visible form, it as it appears, it has that, according to this school, Swatantrika school, it has that intrinsic identity of being able to perform the function of a visible form, whereas the reflected image of the face, it doesn't have that intrinsic identity of being able to perform the function of the reflected image of the face, does not have the ability to perform the function, does not have the intrinsic identity of the ability to perform the function of being an actual face.
Oh, that do shagwari, that you la, any yanda kunjotang, lobby kunjo niche, any you jan la, yalok chaba michava che. They nania, any you de tasore, you kunjo la, lobby kunjo tela, Yovachia kuku amare, Rava, Yovachia kuku amare. That is a yam. And I might watch that did a terrible mumble show you an issue. That the Rangi said that take it. No dini Maribatan Damba now la Rangi Tani to a Kana or Tamse, that answers Jackie Misha by Yinzang. Any Rangi Tani to a Na Sinjala, any Nangang Shewa de Mani Carres and a Maribi Lepa. No dini Maribatan Damba la Rangi Tani to a Kana Tamje, Sheva Te, Maribi Lepinawe, Yumbebes, and Dinzing, Dinzing Pajaji Lepiwange, now a Shebe. Gunzobji Turnla, and a yellow is Chigamaris, Rangatani Truala, now I let that to turn to Badamajuk, yellow is Chigamaris, Gunzob Turla. Gunzo yellow is Chigamaris.
So then, then within this Swatantrika system, then again, they don't differentiate something being correct or correct phenomenal thing versus being an erroneous phenomenal thing in terms of the perceiving subject, but rather they do it from the point of view of the status of the object as to whether it possesses the intrinsic identity of being able to perform the function of the thing that it appears as. So they make that kind of differentiation, and then there are many other aspects of this that could be discussed, but we're not going to go into all the details of this here. And then, so that's the way the Swatantrika, basically the way the Swatantrika system presents this. Then in this system, the Prasangika system, it says that for people that possess ignorance, for persons that possess ignorance, everything that appears to be established by means of its own intrinsic identity is an appearance which is adulterated by that ignorance, the ignorance with respect to that awareness. And therefore, because of that, the kind of differentiation of phenomenal objects into correct and erroneous is not, that distinction is not made within this system, this Prasangika system.
Oh, yeah. That Gunzola Yalo news to Mishang. And it's then be shown what I did, the Yalo news to Jabba, all of my tongue.
So here, where it says phenomenal objects are not distinguished into the two in terms of the being correct or erroneous, it's not done within the context of this system, but as we'll see when we get further, we can differentiate between correct and erroneous phenomenal things from strictly from the perspective of worldly knowledge.
That Cheshing Sunyan, Te, Dala Chame, Chidambala, Kuzo Damba Miang, Dala Chame, Chidambala, Kuzo Damba Miang, Chirikuzo Damba Yimbani, and Diri Judele, Kashikuzo Tian, Tumbani, Kuzo Jidamba Maino, Kuzo Tian, Dambani, Kuzo Tian, Tumba Maino, Sigana, Sunyan Tabu, Kuzo Tian, Tumbani, Kuzo Jidamba Maino, Sunyan Cheshin to Nayang. Chashing Tomba Chungandi, Ani Kunzo Kitama Mai, Sungwarishi, Sumbani, Dala Chamil, Jigdambi, Kunzo Jungor, Chashin Jisunyan Tabute, Chashin to Midamba Yang, Midambe, 텔라데베 군주다마 마에 다장게 기우 되게 최신 순위도 나양 최신 순위가 동바데 또 안에 가소래 나도 니做초바 주고요와 인장 안에 뒤용으로 군주다마 말해
난돈 니쪽이 똑바
나도 니做초바데 주고요와 인장
주고요래
최신 순위 최신도 나양 최신 그 동바 초바데 주와 인장 안에 텔라데베 군주다마 말해.
So then this leads to the discussion of this, the way in which something like the reflected image of a face, that is not a phenomenal reality based upon the perspective of is not phenomenally real from the perspective of an educated worldly person, but it is in general, one has to say, a phenomenal reality. And then this is explained below. And here it says in the commentary on the introduction to the Middle Way that that which is that which is spurious, even phenomenally, is not phenomenal reality. So then this is explained in the here in the text, is saying that something like a reflected image of a face. Since it's not real as a face from the perspective phenomenal perspective of a worldly person who is conversant in the ways of the world, is educated in the ways of the world. It's not real. Therefore, it's from that perspective, one would say it's not a phenomenal reality. Dele to be consulted. Dele to be consulted.
텔라데베 군주다마 많이 넣었으니까 아니 된다 돈이 뭐 달라 마장위 지den비 지den 발할 때도 군주다마 많이.
So then,
텔라데베 군주다마 많이 넣었어. 미덴베 텔라데베 군주다마 많이 넣었어. 뒤다 달라 상황이 나머지 저도 주바 인자 군주다마 말해.
So for these, anyone who's sophisticated in the world, worldly person who understands such things, they're able to establish that the reflected image in the mirror is a combination of an appearance and a form of emptiness. Emptiness in the sense of it's empty of being an actual face. So they're able to establish this reflection as a combination of an appearance and it being empty of being an actual face. So in that sense, they have established this kind of combination of appearance and emptiness.
군주담바 많이 넣으시오. 대체 군주담바 메노 대단나양 수년인데 최신기 수년인데 아니 다장게 끼위 뭐 안에서 가서래 나도니 저지 소바집에 군주담바 많이 나양 대단나양 세제 전부 통위 세제 전부 노유 통위 탄협이 참아 세제 전부 노유 통위 탄협이 참미 아니 예비 통인배 군주담바래 그래서
단입이 쯤 예비준
现在真把通为也都是多现在真把通为也比这个呢现在真把通为他也比前面也比通你因为安尼工作等把的现在真把通为他也比前面也比通的工作等把给通下一张大家给一张工作等把你的
Nevertheless, so even though it's the case that these sophisticated people recognize that that the face, reflected image, is not a real face, therefore they are able to combine they're able to combine they're able to understand that there's a combination here of the reflected image as well as the absence of an actual face. Nevertheless, so it's not the thing is not phenomenally real from that perspective. That is, they understand that it's not an actual face in that sense. However, though it is, even though that's the case, because it's an object here, this reflected image of the face is an object which is found by someone who is seeing an object which is an object of knowledge which is spurious and deceptive. Therefore, it is phenomenal. It's a phenomenal reality. So here to specify an object which is found by a vision or someone seeing an object which is a spurious and deceptive object of knowledge. Here that refers to it's an object which is found by conventional valid cognition. Therefore, it is a phenomenal reality.
Oh yeah. 군저 덴바 오 이노 덴바 오 수년 나위 시와 나유라 추와 신도 다음 최신 그 수년 나위 아니 시와데 아니 나유라 추와 신도 마르바단 덴바나라 마르바자시 마르바단 덴바나라 마르바 아니 원벌라 소와 랑그 천이 추와 나와야 나유라 추와 총바레 와 하고서
So then, just as the awareness of the appearance of the reflected image is erroneous with respect to its appearing object, here referring to the case of the worldly, sophisticated worldly person who's seeing the reflected image, that awareness is erroneous with respect or mistaken with respect to its appearing object, the reflected the face. Just like that, those who possess ignorance and for whom things like a patch of blue, etc., appears to be established by means of its own intrinsic identity, those also are mistaken with respect to their appearing object. So in terms of being mistaken with respect to the appearing object, both are similar in that respect.
Oh, 대이다 되게 아니 탄주위로라 아니 원벌라 소와 랑그 천이 주와 나와라 원벌라 소와 랑그 천이 주와 나비 왕시대 아니 원벌라 추와 원벌랑그 천이 주와 나와라 추와데 랑그 천이 주와 타냐 마주바 아니 만도 랑그 천이 주와 타냐 동야 샤지 미시바체 뒤준전체 나랑 랑주바게 아니 원보 라소와 랑게 원보 나베 왕원데 원보 나베 차라 랑게 천이 주와 나베 차라 만주와 임바데 안 원보 라전이 주와 샤지 셰바 이장 다디 쳬바 그 저거.
So then this indicates then the difference between the Prasangika school's understanding of how things like visible objects appear to perception, to sense perception, and versus the way the Swatantrika school interprets this. Here, as it says, that those who have ignorance, for them the patch of blue, a visible percept, an object which is perceivable by vision, appears to be established by means of its own intrinsic identity, and therefore it's mistaken with respect to its appearing object. Here, for the Swatantrika school, they would say that perception, that is sense perception, insofar as the objects appear to perception, sense perception, as established by means of their own intrinsic identity, then that sense perception is not mistaken with respect to the appearing object. Because for them, the appearing object is established by means of its own intrinsic identity, whereas, again, within the Prasangika school, something being established by means of its own intrinsic identity is not acceptable because it's not for the Prasangika school. Such an appearance is not established by any kind of valid conventional knowledge.
Oh yeah. 那有了出从所好钱，但是下下点把出啊的，下下点把，我出啊的就没着讲，下下准备着把出啊的你给超市着吧，他把你，那地的啊，那就看着嘞，像那下下点把着吧，谁干了，拿住他那就听把点把，落在了拿住他那就听把，是吧？就点把的点比听一把，现在下下点把着呢。 아나 대다 추와 로 추와게 아니 조바데 가와레 샤제 템바 조제데 나주다 내주 템비기 최대 조제게 로라 아니 시와 만주와 돈이 템바 무슨 도다 로지 로 조고가 유장 샤제 템바 조바 추와데 조바 가양 추와데 조바 가양 샤제 준바 조바라 아니 로 추와티니 초스 좋아래 추와티기 아니 저거래 로 추와티니 초스 좋아 이노스
로 추와
추유도 당연히 참말로 추와지만 돼요 말에 삼전 규지
So then, comes a discussion of the relationship between conventional valid awareness. This conventional valid cognition is, for the Prasangika school, all mistaken awareness, in that it's mistaken with respect to its appearing object because it misapprehends the appearing object as being established by means of its own intrinsic identity. So, in order to establish something which is to be validly cognized as being real, that is, appearing in the way it exists, or having it's the way it appears and the way it exists being in agreement, in accord, then such a erroneous, mistaken cognition, that is, conventionally valid cognition, is contrary to establishing something as being real. But, however, in order to establish something, to posit something or establish something as being a spurious thing to be understood by valid cognition, then that functions as operates to assist in that process. So here, that very cognition here refers to the cognition which is mistaken with respect to its appearing knowledge. The conventional valid cognition that operates as an assistant to positing this, a thing to be known as a spurious object of knowledge, to be known through valid cognition.
Oh yeah, 주바디 줘봐 가양, 샤샤 준바 줘봐라 ten이 초스 줘봐 이노스. 다 텐데 단다 대다 많이 나왔지. 아니 샤샤 템바 줘봐. 아니 추어도 줘봐 가와당. 샤샤 준바 줘봐라 ten이 초스 줘봐 대다 많이 나. 타냐도 템바 맞음나. 템바 맞음나. kunzo tenpa ya jwa mini pe tanya tu tenpa majum na tanya tu tenpa majum na kunzo tenpa jwa mini pe gyuma zabi zumba nam tanya tu jwa na kunzo tenpa jwa mini pe yuro di kandri na di teta mayi na tanya tu tenpa majum na tanya tu yang tenpa majum na 아니 군조 담바 좀 미니베 군조 담바 좀 메나 좀 미니베 규마다위 좀 타내지 좋나 군조 담바 샤 미니베 주로 스디 간자지도 되는데 야 샤제 좀 받더니라 저 와치노 세다 대다 마이나 세데 된데 세 타내도 담바 마주나 군조 담바 좀 미니베 타내 담바 마주나 군조 담바 좀 미니베 규마다비 줌바 남 타냐도 좋나 규마다비 줌만다 자 타냐도 좋나 오래 규마다비 줌바 타냐도 좋나 아니 군조 덴바 샤면에 봐 주로 타냐도 좋나 로팅오 덴바 인지 로팅오 군조지 덴바 세 로팅오 아니 덴바 인지 세데 군조 덴바데 샤면에 봐 주로 쓰긴 받아
So, kunzo demba shabi nuwar.
타냐도 규마다위 줌바 타냐 좋은 데데서 코카보도 와 대다 마이나 타냐도 덴바 줌나 덴바 마줌나 군조 덴바 좀 미니베 타냐도 덴바 마줌나 군조 덴바 좀 미니베 타냐 덴바 마줌나 군조 덴바 좀 미니베 규마다위 줌바나 타냐도 좋나 규마다위 줌바나 타냐도 좋나 아니 로 강경어 담바샤에 대야시 그 안에 군조 담바에 샤니 그마 로 팅어 담바게 군조 담바에 샤미니가 주루스 단에 때문에로서 럽도 주다.
Then so if that's not the case, that is that this mistaken awareness, which is all conventionally valid cognitions, are called mistaken awarenesses because they're mistaken with respect to their appearing object, taking them to exist by means of their own intrinsic existence. So if that kind of if that kind of awareness was not able to assist in positing something as a spurious thing to be known, to be understood validly as spurious, then if that was not the case, then since it would, if something was not established conventionally as real, then since one would not be able to if something was not established as being real even conventionally, then since one wouldn't be able to establish it as phenomenal reality, then when one is conventionally positing things, spurious things like magical illusions, one wouldn't be able to establish them, one would not be able to establish them as phenomenal realities.
야, 일단 내 제로 디테일도 꼭 가보도 좋아. 다 되게 란지비르라 아니 유래야 로니스 제지 유전래야 로니스 메체바. 대양 아니 양다당 양다 군조당 군조당 전동 가서 로비 군조 니스 체바. 다 룬데라 아니 유다 유전이라양 가 양다 가서 군조라 양다 군조당 로비 군조 니스 메체바. 지된 비시원라 되데 아니 양다 군조당 로비 군조 니스 체바. 대양 아니 유전라야 지된 시원라 되데 양다 군조다 양다당 지된 시원라 되 양다 군조 스탄에 지금 말에 양다당 로바. 유라양 지된 시원라 되데 양다당 로바. 이지 지금
So then this last passage is difficult to construe, but the way we've done it is perhaps the case. And then the next section shows that within the prasangika system, the way of, within the system itself, one doesn't distinguish between correct and erroneous phenomenal realities. They're all, that sort of distinction is not made in the way that the Swatantrika system does that in terms of the objects of awareness being categorized as either correct or erroneous. Then within the Prasangika system itself, however, outside of the Prasangika system, or one can adopt the way in which these sorts of distinctions of things being actual or erroneous, true and false, one could say, from the perspective of the worldly way of understanding them. And so then there's a way of presenting things as being correct or erroneous with respect to the phenomenal things from the perspective of the world itself. And then this is explained in the following passage here, together with some text which is evidence for this way of doing it.
가서라 지대라 때문에 그저 양로 제주 세제단 자와니 다 세제도 오라마 장도와 당에야 내려서나 산주 루지니 차지 추지 말레비 셔와 초당 내가 매배 안보 초남지 송와 강시 지대 기도의 지대니라 대인 시거래 차지 추지기 말레밤 내가 매비 아니 안보 미기 샤와네 이셰그 봐도 미기 나선 나의 남시 제 남시 내지 남시 이시 주요하라 샤와 주 오 차지 추지 말레비 아니 안보 주 아니 샤와 주보 태당 티유 주보 주주간이가 아니 유주보데 기대 시험을한테도 유지 유양다체 차지 추지 말레비 셰와 주보데 기대 시험을한테도 유장양다체고 말이 인장 아니 차지 추지 말레비 셰와 주당 대련 도바 세가라 차지 추지 레바기 셰와 주당 차지 추지 레비 셰와 추기 유데 니 여바 인장 차지 추지 레비 셰와 주보데 기대 시험을한테도 유장 로바당 차지 추지 레비 셰와 주보데 유 주보데 기대 시험을한테도 유로바 자니 자자야 되라 차지 추지 말레비 셰와 주당 대려도비 셰와 주당 셰와 아마 추기 송유 유 주당 치마 추기 송유 유 추 신용도바 요 네바 메베 안보 추남지 송아 강시 직된 기도데 직된일에 대인 세가라 차지 추지 네바 메비 안보 추보 대 셰와 추보 대당 디유 유 추보데 직된 시험을 되지 양다바래
Then, so the way that this is done within the Prasangika system is looking at it from the perspective of worldly knowledge or worldly beings. Here, we make the difference between, in terms of awarenesses, which are impaired, which are affected by temporary sources of error, so an awareness which is affected by a temporary source of error, and that will be explained later. So the 6 types of awareness here refer to the 5 sense awarenesses, eye, visual awareness, auditory awareness, and so forth, as well as mental awareness, we could say like the intellectual awareness or the mental awareness. So those which have not been affected by temporary sources of error, where it says not affected, this could equally be glossed as unimpaired. So an awareness which is unimpaired by a temporary cause of error. And then that's on the one hand, and then likewise the objects which are apprehended by a unimpaired awareness, those would also, from the perspective of the world, those would be categorized as correct phenomenal things. The awareness and the objects would be correct phenomenal things. Then the opposite of that, the 6 types of awareness which have been affected by some temporary source of error, or that have been impaired by a temporary source of error, and then the objects which are apprehended by such awarenesses that have been impaired in that way. So these are 2 sets, and based upon those 2 kinds of sets, we can say that the former set of the unimpaired awarenesses and the objects apprehended by those unimpaired awarenesses are categorized as being correct phenomenal things from the perspective of the world, and on vice versa. On the opposite of that, the impaired forms of awareness and the objects of those impaired forms of awareness are categorized as the erroneous forms of phenomenal things. So then the text here says that, so it describes the 2 sets, the 6 awarenesses which are affected by temporary causes of error, and the 6 awarenesses which are the opposite of that. The 6 objects which are apprehended by the former 6 awarenesses, and then the objects which are apprehended by the latter 6 categories of awareness are then subdivided into erroneous subjects and objects, the six of each, and those are called erroneous phenomenal things. And then the non-erroneous or correct, non-erroneous objects and subjects are posited as correct phenomenal things. And no. The Yanlok Malope Yu Chen Druk Yanda Consult to Jola.
Chama to some you true days. Lobby you Jan True. Jitan Shangwala de Loba. Taji Truji Lebi Ani Shewaki you Trubo Tadang. Taji Truji Lebi Shewa Trubo de Jitan Shangwala de Loba. Loba Tang, Lobby Kunjama Loba Tang. There Lobby Kunson. Malobi is a Taji Truji Malebi Ani Yujan Trudang. T you Trubo de Ani Casarum. Yanda, Jitan Shangwala de Yantaba. Yanda Kunzo de Jolas, Jitan Shangwala de Yanda Sta, Yanda Kunzo Tayan Mijera. You are the Dina, Yanda Kunzo de Dedu Sunda, Yanda Kunzo de Jola. Tian, Jitan Bam, Tanya Bitama Nila Dene. Jitan Bam, Tanya Bitama Nila Dene, Yanda da Lobi Kunzo de Jogi. Pabes. Sibi Jesu Tavi, Richella Dena Mimbe. Sirwa. Sudwa. Tian Jidan be Tanya Jidan ba Tanya be Chamala Dene, Yanda da Lobby Kunto Jordan country Sena. That in the castle. You Yanda, you Lobate. Chaji Chuji Lebi Shewa Tela. Ani you try, you know what now the Madruba. Ani Tony Matovic, Ani Jidan Bagi. 또 뉴바 인상 아니 가서 유응하고데 유로바 그러마 유로바 타지 주지 레비 시와 아니 나보테 돈이 마도베 참 타녀베 참에 록셰스 또 뉴바 인상 유전 로바 그래서
So then the way these are distinguished in terms of being categorized as erroneous phenomenal things or non-erroneous phenomenal things, It has to do with, and this is being done from the perspective of worldly knowledge. The things which are categorized as here within the context of worldly knowledge as being erroneous or non-erroneous or correct. The distinction is being made as to whether or not the awareness is affected or unaffected by some temporary cause of error, of a mistake or error. So these, even within the perspective of, within the context of worldly knowledge, one can employ conventional valid cognition to establish that something is erroneous. That is, one can establish that the cognition perceiving something in an erroneous fashion, one can establish that that is erroneous simply by employing worldly conventional valid cognition. One doesn't have to employ anything outside of worldly valid cognition to make this kind of distinction and to establish things as being either erroneous or not erroneous.
Umawa rangi lula maribadan dembala umawa rangi lula maribala dembala ta sunye yuji lobata sunye na yu wanshi yujian loba ngoso ngombo ani yu yanda ba ngoso na wi jitian xiong le yu yanda ba ngoso na wi xiewa di jitian xiong la de yujian yanda ba 是吧？我说那么你了，那有了对的出门就你要买的是贵，那有了对的出门的你个要买，你个他几百的是吧？你个那有了出这么的是，是吧？哦。
So here, this is explained that this is all this differentiation of things into correct and erroneous phenomenal things is this is posited strictly from the perspective of the worldly or conventional valid worldly knowledge or worldly conventional valid worldly knowledge. I'm sorry, strictly from the perspective of worldly valid knowledge or conventional valid knowledge. So this difference is differentiation into phenomenal things as being correct or erroneous is strictly from that perspective. But this is not done from the perspective of the reasoning awareness, which is consequent on the vision of the Aryas. That sort of distinction into phenomenal things as correct or erroneous is not made from that perspective of this rational awareness that follows after the vision of the Aryas. And since that's the case, within the own system of Madhyamaka, Prasangika Madhyamika, then those who have possess ignorance, for those who possess ignorance, reflected images and so forth, and the appearance of reflected images and so forth, and the appearance of patches of blue and so forth, both of these are erroneous with respect to their appearing object. There's no difference between them in that respect. So there's no distinction they're not differentiated in being mistaken or unmistaken with respect to these appearing objects within the perspective of the Prasangika Madhyamika system itself. And because that's the case, there's no, they don't, within the perspective, within the Prasangika system itself, there's no differentiation of phenomenal things into correct or incorrect or correct or erroneous.
Oh yeah. Also nawa nila na yu la de chuma zhu ni me wi chi sunyan nawa dang also na yu wang xin ni ga ran ta nawa la de san de chuma zhu ki cheba ran ji be joba na xin ni me wi chi ani yang da kun zhe da tan ran ju be joba na xin de yang da kun zhe da lo bi kun zhe je ge ma re wo na ka re现在几天新我了de yang lo joba man do
So then within our own system of the Prasangika Madhyamika, within the system, one can't differentiate between a reflected image of a face and a appearance of an actual patch of blue, insofar as you can't differentiate them as being correct or erroneous phenomenal things, because for people that possess ignorance, they appear equally as possessing intrinsic identity. There's no difference on that level, the appearance of the reflected image to a visual awareness. It appears as if it has intrinsic identity. Similarly, actual patches of blue or other visible forms appear as if they possessed intrinsic identity, and they appear that way to visual awareness. So one can't differentiate them into being correct or erroneous appearances or phenomenal things. On that level, we can do it within from the perspective of worldly knowledge, a conventional valid cognition, which is able to which would differentiate them on the level of just being actual things or not being actual things. But from the Madhyamaka perspective of examining the way these things appear to awarenesses that are affected by ignorance, you cannot make that kind of distinction, because they equally appear to exist by means of their own intrinsic identity.
Oh yeah, dan digi teyanje digi taji xieje tera ta taji lungan la tan de. Ne ba me be ambo chunam ji sunwa kanshi jiden chi do de. Ne ba me be ambo chunam ji sunwa kanshi jiden chi do de. Jiden ni la de yin se de. Doni ma do bi kansa ki 아니 유인은 나와다 맞고 또 민니바다 유전 로시도 또 민니바 인자 지대니라 대답이 대인 라마 타지 주질레비 안보 유추당 타지 주질레비 셰와 안에 주보테 아니 돈이마다 배 타녀배 체매 유주보데 나와다 맞고 또 와당 유전 주보데 로시도 또 니와 이나 지대니라 로바 남바샤 시간라 아니 지대 용어를 들어 로바리 다다지 대차이 바다래요.
So then the text, which is the supportive source, the source which establishes this position, is the introduction to the middle way, and the verse here reads that the world understands that which is apprehended by these six unimpaired cognitive faculties. That is real just from the perspective of the world. The remainder is presented as erroneous even from the perspective of the world. So what this is saying is that within the the perspective of worldly knowledge, we would say that these things are real. Things are real which are apprehended by unimpaired cognition. So you have the 6 cognitive faculties, the sense faculties, and the mental faculty. Those, if they're unimpaired, then whatever they apprehend is held to be real, understood to be real by the world. And from the perspective of the world, these things are real. The remainder, are presented as being erroneous from the perspective of the world. That means that as mentioned above, as we've already said in the text leading up to this, that even from the worldly perspective, the things which are apprehended by impaired cognitions are understood as being erroneous, as not being actual real things.
Oh yeah, that is and the charge to the levy, Shewa, you don't Java, and it's the Shewan of Loba Shara. Oh, charge to the levies, and it's Eugene Yena, and the Loshesu, Tony Madu, Tenam, Tanya Bitema, Don Nuadang. You the Nawada Matuba, you the Meba, Nawata Meba, Tanya Bitema, Don in Zang, Jidation of the Lobade, still down there. That charge to the levy, Shewa Tela, and Yina Yang, Shewa Eugene, Loshes, Don Minuachidang. You the Matuba, and Tanya Bitema, Don Minuga, Mixaya Della, Mixa Della. Our charge to the levy, Zindangi Dojo, Tanya de Taman John Miniba, Mixani, George Minibi Mixati. That dela, Casa the Chur, Rangi Tani to a Zimbala, New Yorkers, Kasaki Danzindang, Chui Danzindella, New Yorkers. New Cadres and Takasin Azukamashana, Cheni, and it to dead Julebi Wangi, and it Rangi Trua, Tani to a Tatonyamba Zimbi. And it's in Bakunda Chitang. And it to the Gilabala, Madeba, Toma Mebana, Sushi, Zimbi, Zimba Hanji, New York is. 10 years be nane, today, to dang and bear tried to Gilabala, Chumi, Denzin Gundati. The matter was Tatunya with Denzin Gundati, charge to Gilabi Shawa ready. Tender with Denzin Gundati, Loshes, Tony Tomato with Tanya with Semato, Minuba Yinayang, Jidashi, Shumola to the Ujan Lobama in Bagi, Misa, Chick, Ujayanda by Misa. T. You, the Batuva, the egg, then do town, and a meba, Jidan dirty, and a castle. Lobai, Taji Trujilaba Yinayang, Ante Tony Mato with Tanya Mitova. Any what touch to the levy, Shewa Yin, 10 me by the touch, any Tony Mato, Tanya Betema, Mitoba, Tigi Mixa, Mixa Timbari. Chiltang, Grossy, then Dizo, and it was Tanya Betema to Kumari. Denzin Gunda, Zendang, Shayu Mabatan. Denzin Gunda de Anacasore, Tatonia be tending the Loshezu. Antonio Mato Betania Besson, Tony Gumari, said la Tanga has logo, and the thing at Casada Chair Rangi Tani to a Timbala, Ni Yebi, Tumdang and Bear Chadu Yilabale Chue, Dabi, Zindangi Dosoni, Tanya Betamem, Midrube Mixalo, Lujan Loshes Mido, oh, Zindang de Mebayam, Medoba Yinzang, that tender was the charge to the levy Shewa Yinayang, Tanya Betamem, Tumuduba Mixai.
So then there's an exception here that to what's been stated above. What we've just said is that worldly valid cognition, conventional valid cognition, is able to distinguish between things which are correct or incorrect in terms of the worldly knowledge. There's an exception to that general rule in the case of something which has been established by means of some kind of bad philosophy. Bad philosophy can establish or supposedly establish something as existing by means of its own intrinsic identity. That sort of misapprehension of things as existing by means of their own intrinsic identity is, which is sort of artificially mentally constructed by philosophy, is a way, in a sense, follows on and reinforces the innate misapprehension of things as existing by means of their own intrinsic identity that we've been habituated to from beginninglessly. And so therefore that's the exceptional case, or an exceptional case, in that ordinary worldly valid knowledge is not able to demonstrate that the subject which is perceiving things as being existing by means of intrinsic identity, as well as the objects which are conceived or perceived as existing by means of their own intrinsic identity, is not the worldly conventional valid knowledge is not able to establish them as not being correct, as being incorrect. So then the text here says that there's a special case in that one's not able to establish by conventional valid knowledge that the opposite of the way things are misconceived by someone who's been impaired or affected by philosophy, or here wrong philosophy. So here the condition, which is the temporary condition, which is impairing one's cognition, here would be bad philosophy, and that can't be eliminated. The specific form of it, apprehending things as being existing by means of their own intrinsic existence, that cannot be removed by worldly valid cognition. So then the text here explains that with regard to misapprehending persons and phenomena as existing by means of their own intrinsic identity, there are two forms of this kind of misapprehension of the self of persons and self of phenomena. So as we mentioned previously, there's the natural or innate form of it, which is the way in which everyone who hasn't understood reality apprehends things as if they existed by means of their own intrinsic identity objectively. That is not what's under discussion here. Rather, it's the form of that the imagined or artificially mentally constructed form of misapprehending things as existing by means of their own intrinsic identity, which derives from one's own bad philosophy. Bad philosophy operates temporarily to affect the mind, to impair or pollute, adulterate the mind, one could say, or affect the mind, and in order to the opposite of the way that things are apprehended by that sort of misapprehension of the way things exist, that is an exception, a special case of something which cannot be established by conventional valid knowledge.
Oh yeah, that's it. Oh, 주반년나 제장 주셔지 좀 먹고 왔네. 니나 연나양 다 추위셔가 좀 먹고 와 그래서나想말이 바자지 레비 레비 타다단 차위 안에 산제지 企业把钱把是呢，工作单位一些啦，啊，工作参加工作单位参加这么一些的啦，你说那么下样，你说那么你那有啊这是，他就你那的来送下一把，有单有钱，他代表那么的工作跟那么的，店主跟那么一张订来了，工作跟那么有啊一张。企业把钱给你一些的了，工作跟那么下把营养，因把有啊一张，你说那么下样，那有了，出版你满意的，跟着你现在下生做送的。
So then, and then moreover, there's another case here that, or was just saying that with respect to the gnosis, which knows the diversity of things, this gnosis of a Buddha is divorced from all causes of all of the causes which are that affect the mind by the force of the propensities of ignorance. That gnosis, although things appear in a dual fashion, here of the three types of dual appearance that we've mentioned already, this is in reference specifically to the phenomenal things appearing in a dual fashion. Although things appear to that gnosis which knows the diversity of things, that is not erroneous with respect to its appearing object, and the reason for that has been explained, has already been explained elsewhere.
Oh yeah,
so we'll stop there for today.
Agi jinye sawe ge wa de den dang zhuo wa gun la gan ben dang che ba ji jian lo san den bin yin bo zhen lu sa ji shou ji bei ji zhuo xin me dao dang de la lin xie jin de san jie xin du mi de bu wa ye zhuo gun nang jie zhen zhen la jie ba ai shou yi dang gu ru ra na min da la ga na ya mi